that everything is hunky-dory as it should be. Yes, I think we are live. I think we are going live. So let me just check on my phone. I think what I should do first of all is just I think we are skip ads. Yes, we are going live. Start with Paul C.
That's right. We've got 3 polls on the screen.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah,
you thought this was a good idea.
Well, actually, I was hoping that Paul Murray, you might have gone by the nickname of a certain very appetizing Scottish delicacy.
Yes, of course, because my name was Haggis when I learned my sort of nickname. I don't know if I can change my name on this from that, but anyway, that happened as a result of a night where there was a drunken band of guys over in the corner, and I'd been playing away, and they decided I was called Haggis, and I remember, hey Haggis, go over here, Haggis, can you look over there at the boys? Here's 20p. Can you look over there at the boys and say hello, boys? Can you do that? As I went, hello, boys. Hey, Haggis. And for then I was Haggis. So,
can you remember where that was?
I have no idea where that was.
It was at the Waverley Castle Hotel, and if you remember, it was you, me, Hector, and Rory.
Was it really? Goodness.
Yeah. Was it not Rory?
Yes, it would have been Rory Johnson in the very early days. So Rory and I were at school together. We were at primary school together.
Yeah.
He was the first accordion player I played with in Bon Accord before David took over. So good memories. I remember that. Yeah.
Well, we'll get to Paul C in a moment, but actually, do you know I was remembering the very first time I saw you was playing with a school ensemble. That's an old folks home in Pennycook. Do you remember that?
That would be correct. Yeah, most likely Maitland House or Broomhill Day Centre or somewhere like that. Yeah. That would be about right. Yeah.
Yep.
And it would have probably been probably most likely the Pennycook High School Fiddle Group. Back then. So that's that was one of my earliest experience of playing fiddle music, where Pennycook Folk Club and the fiddle group at the school.
Excellent. Anyway, we'll get back to your sort of musical roots in a wee while. First of all, I'd like to ask Mr. Chamberlain to tell us about your musical roots.
Both my parents were musicians. My dad, a well-known fiddle teacher or violin teacher, as he would have called himself, in the Borders, and I played around when I was quite young. So that was my very first instrument. When I was about 3, I had a tiny 8-size violin, and I went for lessons when my dad was teaching in the school. Still, I used to go to, I think it was Kelso High, and have a lesson with Ian. That was years ago. My dad retired when I was 5, and I had lessons at home. And the discipline wasn't there, and I sort of lost interest and got more interested in the piano and eventually the accordion from hearing traditional music. I think my mum obviously played the fiddle in Reimer's Old Ceilidh band, and I just one day decided I wanted to learn the accordion.
Yes, I saw
accordion in clank scales. Yeah, that was when I met you. So that's right. Yes, about 1991 or something like that. That'll be.
Yeah. Can you remember what sort of accordion you started off with?
It was a little red Honor. I can't remember exactly which one, but somewhere I'll have a picture of it. Yeah, little red 48 bass, and I had that for a while, and then little black 72 bass, and gradually increased up to the full size.
Excellent. So, when did you first start hearing serious accordion music? Because I know people in Scotland might take huge offence at the idea that traditional Scottish music, how is that not serious? But if you could explain what in the accordion world we would regard as serious accordion music.
Yeah, I mean, the classical side of the accordion is still quite unknown here compared to many other places. But it was when I was about 15, 16, myself and David Nisbet were invited to go to play in a concert in Blackpool, organised by Tom, and they had Oleg Sharoff over Russia as the sort of guest artist. And there were 6 of us youngsters chosen from around the country to come along and play as the sort of first half, each do a couple of pieces and a joint one together. And that was really the first experience of classical music on the accordion. Oh, there he is. Good evening.
Just like that, Matt into the chat. Hello, David. How you doing? We can hear you. Or like I thought I heard him.
Yeah,
I heard him.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't hear you at the moment.
We can hear you.
There.
Yeah, we heard you.
I think this must be the most common question asked on like Zoom calls and all that. Must be, can you hear me?
Can you?
Yes, absolutely.
By a country mile.
Hopefully, David will manage to sort out his audio. So, okay, you mentioned Oleg Sharoff.
So he was professor of accordion in St. Petersburg at the Rimsky-Korsakov Conservatoire, and obviously it was a different kind of accordion playing from what I'd come across before, and it was button accordion, free bass, and I kind of came away from that experience inspired and decided that I wanted to pursue a bit more classical side of the music, and also I ended up going to Russia. He invited me to go and play at one of his festivals in St. Petersburg, and again that was a sort of eye opener into a different world. And I then decided to change over from piano accordion to button accordion as well. Right. So it's sort of had a catalyst of various things happening.
Yeah, that's interesting. My dad was very, very friendly with Tollefson. In fact, my mum has a teaspoon that was given to my mum and dad when I was born.
Oh, really?
From Tolof, because he was in London at that time, and my dad had actually had the conversation with Tolof about changing to a button-keyed accordion, and Tolof has said, well, if you're comfortable with the piano, stay as it is. But how did you find the transition to button keyed? Because I mean, let's explain to the listeners. They are it's a very logical system layout, but it's so different in the different stretches, and you have to be so deadly accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to begin with, I sort of had both on the go, because I came from a position of confident, I would say, and then being able to play very little or virtually nothing on the button accordion. Wanted to obviously get to that point, so I was playing my piano accordion for gigs and for Scottish, and trying to learn this new thing, and it was quite hard. But I then just got rid of my piano accordion and got a separate button accordion that was musette tuned as well as the freebase one, and that then sort of made the learning process faster.
Right.
And so there you've got the same thing on both high-bass accordions. So it's as you say, it's a logical system. You can reach different stretches, larger stretches, different positions, and it does have its benefits. But however, there are also many accordion players who can play pretty much anything. And I studied with Georgi Gajic, who's one of those incredible players that can play absolutely anything at all. So both systems have their merits.
Oh, indeed. I remember a radio broadcast by Mogen Zellegard where he talked about the fact that he was playing in a bar in I think it was in New York, and there was a regular customer that came in, and he always wanted the signature tune for the North, and another customer that came in that always wanted the signature tune for the South. And so what he did was he played the melody of the North on the right hand and the melody for the South on the left hand. Have you ever heard that one? Yeah.
No. I've heard one or two sort of similar things done like that, but not.
Yeah.
Not that.
But this is a way of preventing a new American Civil War. Was to do it that way. Paul, sorry, Paul Murray, Mr. Haggis. Well, first of all, let's discover why haggis. How did that come about?
So that was a result of a gig, and you know where the gig was. Go and remind me where it was.
Waverley Castle at Melrose.
Waverley Castle, yep. So, and it was a group of very drunk people who, very drunk boys, over to one side of the room, and for whatever reason, they decided that I was called Haggis. And they kept going, hey, Haggis, 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 Haggis. And then one of them came over, Haggis, here's 20p. Here's 20p, go and say, like, hello, boys. And so I took 20p of hello, boys. Hey, Haggis. And from then on, I was Haggis. And in fact, I had pals in Pennycook who called me Fuzzy because I had sort of fuzzy hair at one point. And so I kind of became Fuzzy Haggis online. So the online name that I frequently use is Fuzzy Haggis and has been for many years now. So there you go.
Yes, I think it's a term of endearment, isn't it? You know,
I hope so. They seem to be very pleasant. They were hammered, but they seem to be very pleasant.
Well, I seem to remember getting some postcards. I remember once getting a postcard of a Haggis postcard and handing it to you, and I noticed you kept it in your fiddle case for quite a while.
I still got it. Yeah, it's in the fiddle cases up the stairs. I've still got that.
Yeah, and you did show us. So I'm going to put you on the main screen if you want to show us that picture.
I will. Yeah, so this is the picture of myself and David, who popped up and has now vanished, but I'm sure he'll reappear soon. And you can see, so standing up, you've got Hector Mackenzie, who's the drum player. Just next to him, you've got Paul Capaldi, of course. In the middle, you've got me as a sort of slightly grumpy post-20-year-old. And next to me, then you've got David, who... I guess David would have been about 19 at that point. I would have been about 20. So we're reckoning 2000. So about 20 years ago, I reckon that photo was taken.
Yeah. Excellent. Oh no, it is a photograph that I've often used as a profile picture.
It's a nice picture. It captures a moment in my sort of musical career, I guess. And so I really like. I keep it on my bookcase through my living room.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about your sort of musical background, your musical heritage.
So I come from a sort of quite a different sort of musical background. I come from a folk music background. Mm-hmm. So my dad, when he was growing up, he got into things, folk like Martin Carthy, Steel Eye Span, Fairport Convention, Nick Jones. Actually, what's interesting is a lot of English players, a lot of English musicians, folky musicians. Less so the Scottish ones. He didn't get into the Scottish ones when the sort of folk revival happened. It was much more the English ones. So that's the kind of music that I heard growing up. And eventually, at the age of 9, I was taken. My class were given the musical beep test. I don't know if they still do this, but it's a test where they would play your notes. They go beep, and is the beep, and then is the first note higher or lower than the second note, and you had to write it down. And at that time in my school, the rules were the person who got top in that test got to play the piano for whatever reason, and then the next 4 got offered the violin. So I was offered the violin. And I really didn't want to play the violin of all the instruments. Like I had that association with like Walter the Softy from the Beano. It just like, that's not the instrument I want. But I think, I don't know how it transpired that I did end up playing it. And so I was taught classical violin, but actually my teacher, who was Annalise Dagg, so she was actually English, but she'd come to live and teach in Scotland. She'd been told by Midlothian Council that she had to teach Scottish fiddle music as well as classical music. And I think most teachers would probably just buy a Cayley book and like photocopy it and give it to the kids, and that would be that sort of box ticked. But she actually went and learnt about it. So she went and did Alistair Fraser's fiddle courses up in Skye and stuff like that, and actually became quite a serious fiddle player. She ended up joining the Whistle Binkies, quite a well-known folk band in their own right. Yeah, so she kind of taught me both at the same time. And I did associated board grades up to grade 6. And then I remember standing outside my grade 6 at the age of 16 and saying, this is the last one of these. I'm not doing any more of these. I'm going to be a fiddle player from this point on. And by that point, I'd already started going to the folk club in Pennycook quite regularly because my dad was a member down there. And so I used to go and play my fiddle at the folk club, and I used to play my fiddle as part of Pennycook High School Fiddle Group. I famously upstaged the McCalmans, who are quite a well-known folk band, and they were playing Pennycook High School, actually, where I was a pupil at the age of 14, my 14th birthday. And I was the slightly precocious MC for the fiddle group when we did the kind of half-time slot. And so, yeah, I successfully upstaged Ian McCalman at the age of 14, and every time I've met him since, he's never let me forget it. So,
well, yeah, absolutely. And then, so you were in this fiddle group.
Mm-hmm.
What came next?
So, at some point, there was a PE teacher in Pennycook, Annabelle Oates. And but she was really, really into Ceilidh dancing, and she started up a Ceilidh dance club at primary school. So I Ceilidh danced at primary school, taught by Annabelle, and we actually would then dance at the Pennycook Folk Club concerts. We would do like demonstration dances, and then that sort of continued to her running a Ceilidh club in Pennycook Town Hall. And so she was big into that. And at some point when I was maybe about 17 years old, she was the caller for a band called the Wild Geese Ceilidh Band. And their fiddle player couldn't do a gig. And so Annabelle asked me to come and do it. So I did this gig for the Wild Geese. So that was probably my first Ceilidh gig. And then at some point, she got a gig at St. Margaret's School, which that was a private school kind of next to Cameron Toll in Edinburgh. And I was playing there. It was me and Rory and Philip Hay, who was another pal from Pennycook. So the three of us did that gig with my dad, actually. He played guitar. And Annabelle is the caller. So that was a sort of very early gig as well. And at some point, so Rory Johnson was the accordion player. We sort of formed a wee school band. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, Rory's stepsister, Charlotte Brown, was playing with you guys, Paul. She was playing fiddle with you guys. And I think you taught Rory accordion. That was the sort of connection. Yep. And there was like gigs that she couldn't do. And so Rory had suggested that I come and do the gigs. And so that was, again, some sort of early gigs. And at times, I ended up kind of in the band just as time went on. So, yeah, I was playing with you guys must have been for about, at least somewhere about 10 years, maybe 7, 8, 9, that kind of number of years. And later on, David and me and Paul, we kind of got together and we formed a wee band. And did some gigs, and I also got pally with some people from the Folk Society at the University of Edinburgh. We formed a band, and that band's kind of still going as a sort of quite occasional outfit, but we're still going and playing gigs to this day. That's off centre. So yeah, I've been in a number of bands over the years, and it always seems to happen by accident. I think it's quite unusual in the Ceilidh world for people to go, well, we're forming a band, and then that band becomes successful. It all seems to happen by accident.
Indeed. Good evening, David. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. And yourself?
Excellent. You've got the audio sorted. What was the problem? Was it just a case of switch it off, back on again, and it worked?
No, I swapped computers. I wasn't getting any audio out. I'm not sure what was going on
here. I think there is a settings thing at the bottom, cam mic, and you need to set it to the particular mic for the job. How long has it been since we all met up?
I know, absolutely.
Well, it's 4 years because it was 4 years because it was Hector's funeral. Somewhere about the beginning of January 2016. That would have been.
Indeed, yep, absolutely. So, what are you doing with yourself these days, then, David?
Yeah, so I'm living up in the Highlands now, living in Inverness, and I've been up here for 10 years now, which I can hardly believe, really. Still, keeping up my interest in music as well as work, and having kids now, and lots of changes.
Well, yeah, funny enough, I was chatting 2 weeks ago to Roddy Matthews, and Roddy and I went up to Inverness to Hootenannies, and then went to the Mallard. And we met somebody who introduced himself as being in a band with you.
It was Rudy Campbell.
Is that amazing? Small world. Anyway, sorry. Right. Same question as I put to Paul Murray and Paul Chamberlain. Your sort of musical heritage, ancestry, shall we say? What got you into the music?
I guess my family and my parents were really into Scottish dance music. And I think also my cousin started playing accordion with Bill Sharp, and then kind of gave it up. And I think I took his slot, his slot. So I went along and got some lessons. and stuck at it. And then I guess my sort of first taste of live music was going along to the accordion and fiddle clubs in the Borders, and that was mainly Selkirk, Galashiels, sometimes Kelso. Just around some of those clubs. That was my sort of first experience.
Well, absolutely. I remember, I think the first time I saw you and heard you play would have been at Selkirk at the cricket club.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And I think it was probably just later on in the evening, maybe as we were leaving. I seem to recall, you'll probably know better, but I seem to recall saying to you, would you be interested in coming along and doing some gigs?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have I got that right?
And then I think I got a phone call from Hector McKenzie at some point. Yeah, and then met Paul and so on. Yeah, it was the accordion clubs are really good for, I guess, a number of reasons. One is that it was a sort of a safe audience. Everybody wanted you to do well, to play well. It was a great place if you were they were so open to whatever you were playing, and Bill was really open with his repertoire and mixed it up. So it was classical, continental, traditional, and those guys were up for listening to anything that you were prepared to belt out. So yeah, they were a nice, welcoming audience. And if you're practicing for competitions and things, again, it was quite a good venue to try it out in, first of all.
Good stuff. So which did you prefer then? What was your sort of inkling? Was it the traditional, or the classical, or was it because I seem to remember you used to do a pretty mean job of by Fancelli 10 kilometers to Finistrini.
Oh yeah, and that's a great one. I'm trying to think who I heard play that first. It was part of a trio of music. It was published in a sort of series, and Accorelli Cubani was one of them. I can't remember what the third one was, but I
think there's a polka and a musette in there.
Yeah.
It was something like 3 impressions.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah. And I'm sure I've got a copy of it over there in my my deluxe filing cabinet, which is several of those plastic boxes with lids on that stack.
And maybe like yourself, it was first. I think it was probably Marcus Signori that played that I heard first of all playing that, and that was Bill that let me hear that and passed on those old recordings. Probably, I think I still have a copy of it on mini disc somewhere. But I know that's how retro is that.
Mini disc, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Just one other question then, to do with like at the sort of musical beginnings. I seem to remember seeing you a big page spread in the Southern Reporter. Was it having won a competition somewhere?
Could have been, yeah.
How did you find that the sort of competing scene, the competitive scene? I mean, I want to get on to Mr. Chamberlain about going sort of beyond the sort of Scottish, the sort of border. How shall I put it? The sort of constraints of just competing in Scotland and going to obviously the world scale. But how did you find competing at?
I think reflecting on it now, it had its sort of its pros and its cons, and I think pros it was focus, just like I suppose exams can be focus, or big performances can be a focus as well. But that was a positive side. Another positive was meeting people, going around, and you got to know people in the sort of competition scene and share your experiences with them.
Yeah.
So that was good, and visiting places. All of that, the social side of it was really good, and the focus, and I guess also the chance to meet experts, adjudicators, and get their critique. Yeah, lots of positives. On the negative side, maybe it was a little bit, in some ways, a bit restricting, because you just focused so much on one Mark Strathspey reel set, on one musette waltz, one tango, and it perhaps didn't broaden your repertoire as much as maybe some other young musicians were getting, who were playing in other other areas of traditional music, folk music?
I don't know if I ever told you this, but we did in some of our gigs. I had a tape recorder, and I taped some of the stuff we were playing. I remember going along in the car, and it was my dad was listening, and he said, that person that's playing the second box, what I don't think he used the term. My dad wouldn't have used the term second box, but doing harmonies, said, "Oh, that's yourself." That was really, really nice stuff. So was that something that you picked up from doing the playing in the orchestra?
Maybe that was, I would maybe listening to others and hearing sort of possibilities with harmonies, but it was all totally scored as well. So there was no, you weren't really improvising around a chord structure or anything like that. I guess that just came, I guess, with listening and playing with yourself and and maybe going back to the accordion clubs and listening to Cayley bands. Yeah, from young, so getting an idea of sounds and structures.
I think harmony singing and playing is a really interesting one. Certainly for me, because obviously you guys know way more about things like chord structures than I do. But I do harmony, and I have done for many years. So I play fiddle harmony for my dad singing, and I sing harmony as well, kind of in folk clubs and what. And it's a very, very instinctive thing for me. It's not sort of something that's planned. And I think David's right. It does come from listening. When you listen to folk singing, you can hear the harmonies, and your sort of brain tunes into them, and you sort of see how they work. And the same with on the fiddle. You kind of listen to people and okay, what's going on there, but it's not a conscious thing. It's something you sort of just absorb, I reckon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly something I've noticed with fiddlers is that a lot of them, they do like to put in a lot of harmonies, that as if it's something that they almost feel it's part of their job description in playing the fiddle, is at times is to harmonize.
Yeah, I think a lot of fiddle players will do that, and it's to add depth and variety to the music, because I think the classic thing is for loads of fiddle players to sit in a session and just like hammer out the melody. So yeah, people like to diversify where they can, where it's appropriate.
Sure. Sorry, Paul Murray. The competition scene for the fiddle, was that something that ever interested you?
No, it never did. The sort of folk club world is very much a social world. It's a sort of in the pub with your pals kind of world, either singing or playing or whatever. And there is sort of competition, sort of lightweight competition, the folk scene. So you get things like the Young Traditional Musician of the Year. There's a Scottish version of that. It's our UK-wide version of that. Things like in the folk club, there was the TMSA annual Scottish singing competition that we'd do at Pennycook Folk Club. So there's sort of lightweight competition, but it's not a sort of serious thing in that there's a sort of network in the way that there is for say accordion clubs. But I know that there is a sort of competitive fiddle scene, which I think, and I may be talking out of turn here, I think it's more linked to the sort of likes of the mod and that kind of competition. Rather than but is it not a part of? Do I not remember playing a competition once with you guys? But it was more of a sort of Cayley band competition. Yes. I don't think there was a specific fiddle section as part of that.
Well, they do have fiddle sections up at Perth, but yes, I do remember that particular competition, because there was us three with Hector, with a pupil of mine, Fraser Stark, who played bass guitar, and Ollie Farrell on piano. But I was going to mention that, obviously one of the big festivals, fiddle festivals in the whole of Scotland, is the Newton Grange competition, isn't it?
Oh right, I am so not connected to the kind of competitive fiddle scene. I couldn't have told you that. I mean, to me, the biggest fiddle festival in Scotland is the Scots Fiddle Festival that happens in Edinburgh. I'm pointing there because Edinburgh's that way. Used to happen at the Assembly Rooms. And more recently, it's happened at Summerhill. Of course, it's probably not. I think it's not happening this year. To me, that's the biggest fiddle festival in Scotland, but that's a sort of performance and sessions. I think it's interesting that it illustrates the difference between the two scenes. Scotland's really interesting in terms of its traditional scenes because they can be quite separate and quite sort of disparate. And the folk scene sort of separate to the pipe band scene is separate to the accordion club scene is separate to the ceilidh band scene. They can be quite disparate. And I know that when Simon Tumier was putting together the Scots Trad Music Awards, that was actually something he was really keen to kind of look at, was to find a way to try and bring these scenes into one place. And he's been quite successful in doing that.
Yeah. I would say one case where sort of those two scenes come together is some of the border competitions, and I'm thinking about over the border in Northumberland, and going to likes of Rothbury, Alnwick, Hexham, and the two would be blurred. You would have folk musicians playing sessions out in the pubs, and at the same time maybe a fiddle competition down in the church hall or whatever at the same event.
That's interesting. That's quite different.
I was being slightly tongue-in-cheek in the fact that it was about, I would say probably about 10 years ago, my sister gave me her old violin, her old fiddle, and I actually entered the Newton Grange, the Nitton Music Festival for a few years on the trot. And one year I actually entered both the accordion and the fiddle section, the open solo, and managed to win both. So, it was quite funny because the point was obviously that the standard of playing by me was not great at all, But as Andrew Knight, who's one of the hosts of the who does the announcing, I said to Andrew, I do apologise for that terrible performance that I did. I think I played something like Hurlock's Reel, the Bonor Highlanders, and like a Strathspey in the middle. Loudon's Bonnie Woods and Babes or something. I can't remember. And I apologized to him, and I said, that must have been absolutely horrendous for you to listen to. And he said, no. He says, I get where you're coming from. I get totally where you're coming from when it comes to fiddle playing. You just went out there and you just couldn't give a beep, beep, beep. You just couldn't be bothered, and that was my sort of secret to success, as it were, in the competitions. Now, Paul seems to be having trouble getting sorted out. So anyway, music. We'll start off with Dave. Music isn't sort of your full-time occupation, though, is it?
No, my day job is I'm a high school teacher.
Specifically in the subject of
physics. Physics is my subject. But I've never been able to separate physics and music. So I've always tried to bring the two together whenever I can, whether that be at school or when I was at uni doing strange experiments on accordions and.
I was going to say, did you not once do a dissertation on physics and music? Or, physics and music.
That was my course, I still have weird dreams about playing my accordion in an anechoic chamber and being connected up to various fancy microphones. Yeah, I think it was real. I think it actually happened. A lot of fiddle players would like to have seen me stay in that chamber, lock me up, but there we go.
Okay, well, we'll get onto that in a moment. but Paul, likewise, music isn't your sort of main job, as it were, is it?
No, so I am also a teacher. I'm a chemistry teacher here in the Kingdom of Fife at Kirkcaldy High School, just up the road. And but what's interesting is I sort of have a similar thing to David, where the sort of science and the music come together. So I'm actually sitting here in my radio studio. I record a weekly radio show, which is why there's quite a sort of fancy looking mic sitting here. And also up at the school, I've got very involved in we do a radio show actually with the school every Saturday on K107 FM, which is the community radio station in Kirkcaldy. And also I've got quite involved in doing the tech for the school shows. So things like the sound and the lights for all the school shows. It's me and a team of kids, and my boss actually, who's head of physics or head of science. We sit on a desk and lights and all that stuff and call lighting cues. So I've kind of combined the science and the music, similar to David. It's the two are quite intrinsically linked as far as I'm concerned.
You've just reminded me of one of the questions I meant to ask David about when he was at Peebles High School, and you had was it a Cayley club, and then they decided that you would organise their sort of proms, and you were put in charge of the sort of DJing side of things. Have I got that right?
Yes, that is right. Yeah.
And can you guess where I'm going with this story?
Lighting. Yeah. I used to do all the school dances at Peebles when I was there. Yeah.
No, I remember because we did a lot of gigs at Dalhousie Castle. What I always fancied was, for want of a better word, a goalpost lighting rig. So I went and saw Neil at the music station. And he said, "Yeah, I can get them. I can get them for you. Yeah, I can get them." He said, "There's a problem though." He said, "You have to buy them in a pair. You have to buy two of them. You can't just buy one. For some reason it's packaged as two. And so when I mentioned that to you, you said,
"I'll have one for Peebles."
Yeah.
I wonder that.
So I delivered it in my Mini, of all things. I had a little Mini at the time. Managed to deliver it with a packing note. And did you have to give that note to the deputy head or something?
Quite possibly. Your memory is better than mine.
Well, no, it was just that I put on the, rather cheekily at the time. I put a message that said, if assembly instructions. That was it. Assembly instructions. If you have a degree in either physics, chemistry, or biology, read the instruction manual carefully. If not, just use common sense.
Very good.
So I do apologise for bringing that one up, but that was it's one that's always made me laugh, because like sometimes when you two, me and Hector would sort of sit around at break time, discussing various stuff, and Paul with your chemistry and you with your physics, it was like a different world altogether.
You know what? It's so lovely to hear talking about Hector, because he was such a great guy, and I still can see Hector on his drums. He would always be usually to my left, and Hector on his drums, and he would sort of be drumming away, and he would turn and like, "Oh," and he'd be faces and stuff like that.
Absolutely. He's a great man. I learned a heck of a lot from Hector. I would say particularly about how to deal with people properly.
100%. 100%. Hector was amazing at that. Absolutely amazing.
His ability to relate to people was fantastic, and that's what made him such a successful dance caller, then organizer. Brilliant.
Yeah. He was very, very just that sort of chatty guy, and I think even just his appearance, it just made people want to come up and have a chat with him. Because Paul, you were saying about the fact that it was, as you say, Charlotte Brown, that's right, who was first in the band. Did you ever hear the story about when Hector went and picked up Charlotte for a gig, and Charlotte had her hair done? And Hector said to her, "Oh, your hair is looking very nice." She said, "Oh, thanks very much. I went and got it done today at the hairdresser's." And he said, "You don't mind me asking, do you? How much did it cost?" She said, "Well, it was £25, which back then is a lot of money. It's like well over £50 today, which is what typically the hairdressers charge. Well, of course, remember Hector had very little hair, And he said £25. He said, my goodness. He said, the hairdresser I go to charges me £5 for a cut. And Charlotte, quick as a flash, said, "Oh, you think that's cheap? £1 a hair?"
Oh man,
Did you never hear that one?
No,
I have a very distant memory of that, but yeah.
I'll tell you here another person that we really miss, Bob, coming along to the gigs in your early days. He used to take you everywhere, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he loved the banter as well.
Yeah.
Especially you guys. Yeah. He really liked all that side of it as well. The cheekiness.
Yeah. Did he once park near when you were staying in a flat in Edinburgh? Did he not once park and they came and lifted his car away? Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that.
Yes, I always remember that bit on Spottiswood Road. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then we went on a Christmas night out with Hector. Paul, you were there. David, were you there as well?
Where was it?
A Christmas night out in Pennycook.
In Pennycook.
Yeah. Herbie had about three Stella Artois, and all he could sing was Lighthouse Family, Lifted.
Yes. With reference to that event. Yeah.
Anyway, Mr. Chamberlain, we were discussing the sort of competition scene, and I really wanted to get your opinions, I suppose. On two things. Dwindling numbers when it comes to competitions here in the UK, but then, thoughts on that. And both obviously, Paul, David. You know, when Bill Sharp used to go to competitions, he would often take a coach load.
That's right. Yeah,
we don't see that anymore.
Big numbers when you and I were competing, David. There was something like 25, 30 folk in a section. It like take half a day. And definitely there's far fewer in any of the accordion competitions here. Some of the older people who have come back, but yeah, not. And there's a sort of there's always a dropout, isn't there? When you get to teenage years, there's a dropout. So it's very young. But yeah, I don't know. I've sort of not been involved in the competition scene in the last few years. I did some adjudicating a little while back, but I see that they're very, very low compared to what they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
I seem to remember meeting you at in Shire Grange one year at the Grangemouth Festival. What used to be the Musselburgh Festival?
Yeah, you were in the. I was adjudicating you, in fact.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah. In the. I had
Musette and things like that. Well, you played one of your own pieces, I think.
Probably, yeah, yes. I wrote quite a lot of musette tunes, and interestingly enough, at the Inshara Grange competition, what used to be the Musselburgh Festival, in the own composition section, you have to write something traditional. So I never won the own composition there, but at Perth, I actually won the own composition section twice. But once was with a reel that I'd written, but the other time was with a musette that I'd written. But yeah, that's right. I mean, I used to love playing Pupazetti. Well, I still do play Pupazetti. You remember that one? Mm-hmm. That's another fan show. Anyway, sorry, we're digressing. One of the things that I noticed. And it's something that, for example, used to discuss quite a lot with Keith Dixon. I know for a fact that, going back to Owen Murray, I'm sure he competed in the Coupe Mondiale and did rather well. Was it in Argentina that he went to?
I'm not sure.
I think it was. I think he played Preludio by Adam Volpe.
Right.
Things have moved on a long time since that.
Yeah. Was that a test piece? Was that Coupe Mondiale?
I don't know if it was the test piece or whether it was his own choice piece. I mean, I love Preludio, which definitely was a test piece for a few years back. But I think it was more a case of Mark Signori did a recording of accordion Coupe Mondiale test pieces. So I think Preludio, Volpe's Preludio is on that, but I was under the impression that it was as an own choice, but he'd done very well at and I a feeling it was Argentina he went to, but we don't seem to have, as far as I know, many people that take the the step of going forward into world sort of competition, apart from yourself, Paul.
It's certainly a growing. I went to Croatia in 2010. I've been 2010, 11. God. When I studied class, that was the Conservatoire in Glasgow. I did 2 years studying in Napier in Edinburgh, and then moved across to was where the sort of now there's been quite players have come through since, and it's definitely make an impression. There's a couple of really good young players now that are making waves, but back then there was not much really. UK Championships used to go down to a quite fun week. Beyond that, very, very few. I think it was a couple of David Farmer. I think it went down 90 something, quite a long time back. But as a country, very underrepresented.
It's a real shame that we're having trouble with the audio. It keeps cutting out, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And I don't quite know what the problem is. Paul, sometimes it might be better, rather than having audio and picture, if the sound is dropping out, just to go with the audio. I think he's frozen. I think the internet must have crashed for Paul there.
I remember being with Paul at an international competition. I sort of piggybacked on his trip to Castelfidardo, and he was doing a competition there a good few years ago, and I was getting my instrument back to the factory. I was getting it repaired, so. Yeah, that was a really interesting trip. It's the only time I've ever been out to the Mecca of accordion.
Right. I had the pleasure. I've had the pleasure of being 3 times to the Shetland Accordion and Fiddle Club Festival that they have in October, beginning of October. It's like 2 weeks before the Perth Festival, and that's very good. Have you ever made it up to Shetland yourselves?
Never made it.
Yeah, I've been there a couple of times actually. Yeah. Through the job I used to do at the university, I used to have a travelling chemistry show, and I used to go around and do chemistry shows and workshops in schools, and had 2 trips up to Scotland, and very cleverly managed to coincide one of the trips to Shetland with the Up Helia. So I actually got to see Up Helia up there, which was really cool. So yeah, it's a good place. It's a really interesting place. I remember going not the day after Up Helia, but the day after that, like 2 days after Up Helia, going out into Lerwick with my fiddle on my back looking for a session. There was just nothing, not a sausage. Everybody in their beds, sleeping off, a 2-day hangover at least. So yeah, it's a really, really, it's a good place. I like it up there.
Did you end up in the lounge at Lerwick?
I did actually. I did go there. And I can't remember if I played as part of a session, but I definitely went and heard a session in that place. Yeah, absolutely.
And Up Helia, that's just at the end of January. So did you fly or boat?
Boat, and oh my goodness. I remember the boat coming home on that particular occasion is supposed to be like however many hours. It was a 20-hour boat, and they cancelled it from the night before. And I remember getting on the boat that day. And is the boat going today? Yeah, the boat's going today. But here's a letter that we're giving to everybody getting on the boat today. And the letter basically said, you get on this boat at your own risk. This is going to be a horrible journey. You're going to hate it. It's like, and right off the minute the thing went, it was off we go. So yeah, tossed about in the ferry, quite something special.
I was going to say you'd have had to done, because I seem to remember you had a works car for the job.
Well, they used to hire cars. I think at that point, I actually had my own car at that point when I did that particular trip. But you're right enough. They used to hire cars through the university to do that particular job. So I would quite often end up with some quite flashy numbers. I knew nothing about cars, and I would be parked outside the chemistry department, and folk would want to have a look at it, and we look inside, and can I sit in the driver's seat? And I'm good. Is there something special about this one? And apparently, it was really nice. I would never have been able to tell you.
Right. Okay, Paul Chamberlain. Sorry, we missed most of what you were telling us about UK involvement in Coupe Mondiale. Could you just give us a quick recap, please?
I'm back on a different
device. Excellent.
So, yeah, the UK has had a few people over the years, but very, very limited. I guess most other European countries, the accordion is much more integrated into the education system, into music schools. Here, it's now starting to be St Mary's Music School, the Conservatoire in Glasgow, and a few other places are actually kind of really promoting the accordion, and there's some great players coming out. And so hopefully going forwards, it may well. Again, there's various different accordion competitions, and some in any scene there's various kind of factions that are involved in these. So some people go in for competitions as a matter of course. Some people stay away from those particular ones. But I guess some of the accordionists here are really trying to get outside of accordion competitions more into the general music sphere, because actually winning an accordion competition doesn't really, you get there's a prize there, but actually creating a career needs to be broader than the accordion world.
Right. Yeah.
So, for instance, there's the Edinburgh Competition Festival. One of the accordionists recently won the concerto competition there this year.
Right.
So there's been every year the last few years there's been an accordion in the final, but this year Alina won the concerto competition, which is against all instruments. There's the Overseas League competition down in London. I did that a few years ago. Came into the keyboard final.
Right.
So just really, I think to integrate it more into the general musical world, as opposed to just that the accordion scene is the right way to go.
Sure. I was going to say another competition. I'm sure you entered it at least once. Was the Roland virtual accordion competition? How did you find that?
Right. The first year of that, when that came out, I won the UK section of that. They sent an accordion that I had for about 3 weeks or so beforehand to try out and to put together a program. And the final of that was in Rome. And unfortunately, it was the very same weekend that I was getting married in India. So I couldn't go to that. I had to pull out of that.
The wedding was much better, Paul. That was fantastic.
You went to India for your wedding. I do remember that. Yes, I remember you telling me about it. And I remember, David, I remember you saying that you would be away for. Well, I'm sure you must have missed a couple of gigs because of it. So it must have been good to go all the way to India to get married. Yeah,
you were away for a whole 3 days, I think, weren't you?
Something like that. Yeah.
All the way to India for 3 days.
Yeah.
Well,
have you been to India? Not sure. I've been to Paul's wedding anyway. I can see
that way. I went all the way to Australia last year, March of last year, for 5 days. So I mean, it's and I went all the way to America for what was it? Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Yeah, 3 nights. 3 nights in America.
Right.
So yeah. I mean, you do these things. No, there was something I'd written down and I can't remember what it was. No, I think we really wanted to just sort of find out sort of what you're doing nowadays. What are you doing sort of work-wise and sort of music-wise nowadays? Because I mean, as I say, I haven't seen you since January of 2016. So what's the music scene? Well, let's start with let's start in the top right-hand corner there with Mr. Murray. What's the sort of music scenes that you're involved in nowadays?
It's a good question. So I'm still involved. I say the Ceilidh band is still going. It's much more of an occasional outfit these days, but it's still going. So I kind of keep my hand in the Ceilidh world. I also run music camps. I've been running a music camp called Tinto Summer School for 20 years. Of course, that didn't happen this year, but we did a virtual version of that instead, which was actually surprisingly successful. I thought, well, this will never work. But no, it was actually really successful. So that kind of carries on. Also during lockdown, actually, so obviously when I left Pennycook and moved into Edinburgh, I stopped going to the folk club there, but they've actually been having weekly Zoom sessions as well. So I've been part of the weekly Pennycook Folk Club Zoom session, which has been kind of nice too. And I see loads of stuff involved in the schools and the radio show and the music tech and bits and pieces. And we've actually just got a new music teacher in the school who is also a fiddle player. She's come up from somewhere around Birmingham, live in a completely different part of the world, and she's also a traditional fiddle player. So I'm kind of hoping that in time that we can start to do something within the school as well. So yeah, music continues to be a very, very central part of my life, even today.
Yep, David, I seem to remember the reason you went up to Inverness was because you were following a fiddler there.
Yes, and then we got married.
Well, it was worth the chase then, wasn't it?
Yeah, and yeah, it's been amazing. Do you know? Ironically, I don't know if you know this story, but before I worked at Peebles, and when you're signing up for your probationary year of teaching, your first year of teaching, I put Highlands down as my original selection.
Right,
and. I chickened out. I pulled out at sort of the last minute and ended up in the Borders. I thought there might be a job coming up, so I went with what I knew and ended up in Peebles. And then, as it turned out, I ended up in the Highlands anyway. So.
And what sort of music do you play up there? Is it very much the Scottish Ceilidh scene?
Ceilidh band. We started a band. Sort of in late 2011, myself and Fiona and Colin Del Monte and Rudy Campbell, we started just a Ceilidh band to do. We were already sort of playing together at various events. As Paul was saying earlier, Paul Murray, he was saying, these things usually come together by accident, and it's so true. We were kind of coming together anyway for various things, so we decided just to maybe formalize it a little bit and advertise as a band. So. Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed that. Playing, obviously, this year's been very quiet.
Same here.
Apart from that, music through the school, music through Fiona's work with Face Ross. I've met so many musicians and the various different hubs and events that we've got in the Highlands. So from Eden Court, we like to go and hear live music at Eden Court. So lucky to have that here. But also some of the other local venues as well. For example, in Cromarty, there's music in Cromarty, Drumnadrochit, Ullapool, lots of places that are not far from Inverness to hear really good quality music from touring musicians. Mm-hmm. I even a couple of years ago, I heard a couple of excellent classical accordionists from Kiev playing in Fortrose.
Right. Excellent. No, I remember.
The Kiev duo.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I did a depth in for a concert for them a few years back down in Faversham, of all places, down in Kent. And they had a problem with their visas, and the organisers somehow got past my name and asked me if I would come and do the concert because they'd sold all the tickets and they had no accordionists. And as it turned out, they got their visas at the last minute, so we did half a concert each.
Excellent.
They're a great pair.
Yeah.
Now, I was going to say, I remember going to Bewley, which isn't far from Inverness, is it?
No, not at all.
No, and it was to see the Coda, Keith Dixon's Accordion Orchestra, and that was something that was being organised by, do you know Margot McClellan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Matthew's mum.
That's right. Yeah, as a result of being friends with Roddy, we've stayed at with Hamish and Margot a couple of times, if I remember rightly. At least a couple of times, and it's been great. Different way of life up there, of course. Slightly more. Well, I suppose the Borders is quite laid back, isn't it, compared with the city?
Yeah.
Actually, the one of the questions I ask everybody that comes on. One of the sort of ongoing debates I have with some other friends in another circle that I'm in. So we'll go around the table, as it were. Edinburgh or Glasgow, Mr. Murray?
Great question. Both, actually, for me. The two. I'm from Edinburgh, really. I was brought south of there, and I lived in Edinburgh for the best part of a decade. So you would expect me to say Edinburgh, but actually I love both cities for different reasons. Right. I love Edinburgh, the architecture, it's where I was brought up, it's all very, very familiar to me. At Glasgow, I love the sort of attitude that you get in Glasgow, and actually it's one of the things I love about Fife as well. I think Fife has a sort of kind of honesty that Glasgow has as well. It's one of the reasons I like it here, and I think it's always really interesting to note that there is a word for someone from Glasgow, which is a Glaswegian. There is a word for someone from Fife, which is a Fifer. There's actually not a word for someone from Edinburgh, which I always think is really interesting. Sometimes you get this sort of Edinburgh thing. But it's a sort of doesn't exist. But as I say, they're two fantastic cities for totally different reasons. I love them both.
I'm going to say, the old term for Edinburgh is Old Reekie. So, I mean, is it not a Reekie?
No, I don't think so. That's not going to go well.
Okay, David, same question.
Well, having lived in Edinburgh for 11 years, I better say Edinburgh. I guess I've got a personal connection to Edinburgh, and I remember going on, as a kid, going on trips up to Edinburgh from the Borders as well, including with your family, Paul. Going to various events. Your mum taking us up to see the tattoo, sticks in my head. I think I've got a particular affection for Edinburgh, and I didn't grow up knowing Glasgow, but I've grown to really like it now, and I've taken the kids down to Celtic Connections with Fiona, and I love Glasgow too, as Paul says, for different reasons. It's a completely different city.
Yeah, I must admit, I do look back with great fondness some of the pub crawls that we did on a few nights out in Edinburgh, and I seem to remember also Melrose and Galashiels and a few other places. Any excuse for a few beers. Great fun. Paul, Mr. Chamberlain.
Well, I mean, I guess I live in Edinburgh, so I know the city very well. I studied in Glasgow, although I didn't live there, so. They've both got different aspects. The festival sort of side of things in Edinburgh and all sorts of cultural things, but Glasgow has got a lot going for it with music. Good venues, lots of different things on, lots of nice places to go. So yeah, Edinburgh's my kind of the city that I know more, and I think when I was growing up, going from the Borders to Glasgow was very exotic. We stayed overnight because it was so far away.
Yeah,
Edinburgh was a day trip.
Yeah, I just remember when, believe it or not, I moved up in '83, and within about 6 months of being in the Borders, I got a phone call from my uncle Chris, who at the time was basically getting a month's residency at a time at various places throughout the world, playing in piano bars. And he said to me, "Could you do me a favor? Could you go and check out Fingers Piano Bar on Frederick Street and just see what it's like, because he had visions of people in kilts and being riotous, and any English person that arrived, they would be sort of sent packing, as it were, wrote about the state of the piano, and everything. So I had the great pleasure. Have you been to Fingers Piano Bar in Edinburgh? Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
It's a great venue. So I came back and said, Chris, you'll go down in an absolute storm here. And I remember because you got the part of the contract is you get accommodation above in the flat above on the top floor of the Fingers Piano Bar, and he said after a couple of days he'd been along Princes Street through the gardens, went to Mather's Bar, and he said, Paul, this is the most beautiful city I've ever been in. Of all the places that he'd played in, throughout the world, basically playing in piano bars. So I must admit, I tend to side with Edinburgh. But my daughter Emily, youngest daughter Emily, she was a student in Glasgow for 2 years, and she came back to Galashiels, but she says, even the back streets of Glasgow are better than Galashiels. So, any other interests? Let's go around the table again. Any other interests apart from music and obviously your sort of work? Is there any other sort of hobbies that you're involved in, Haggis?
Yeah, so one of the things that I got into here in Fife, I've got into a lot of equality work, mainly through the context of LGBT stuff, both in the school and outside the school. I got involved in Fife Pride, which should have happened at the beginning of July. Of course, that didn't happen either. But yeah, wider equality throughout the school, and actually we're going to be doing more of that over the next year or so, we're hoping. So yeah, that's become a fairly major thread in my life over the last couple of years.
Excellent. Can I dare ask how Rupert the Bear is doing these days?
Fine. Now that's I don't think that meeting is going to happen either. So I used to go every year with my folks down to Warwick to the Rupert, the annual general meeting of the Followers of Rupert. I haven't gone to that for a number of years now, not since I left Pennycook, but that meeting does still occur. And certainly occurred last year. I don't think it'll occur this year. But it's interesting to talk about things like the accordion clubs and sort of hemorrhaging the competitions, like hemorrhaging people. Things like the Falls of Rupert is the same. I mean, over time, the folk who are involved in that are just getting older, and so the numbers are depleting. And I think it's common to a lot of these kind of things. Maybe we're looking at the age, particularly with the sort of coronavirus thing, is sort of online living replacing that. I don't know. We could wax lyrical about that for quite some time. Sure.
I mean, can you remember Hector had a theory about the Rupert the Bear Society, because can you remember what it was?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
Well, it was basically along the lines of, if the government found out that all of the top sort of scientists in the country were getting together.
That was a cover.
The best way of covering it would be to have this Rupert the Bear convention. You could get all the scientists come, this sort of conspiracy theory that Hector had, so that wasn't the case then.
I couldn't possibly comment.
Exactly.
Couldn't possibly comment.
Anyway, I'm glad to hear that you're in helping with the did you say it was Fife Pride? Fife
Pride, yeah. Same. Yeah. It should have happened at the beginning of July. We also did an online event. I am constantly surprised at the success of online events, and of course, it's never the same. We would usually have. Last year, we had something like 5,000-6,000 people going down Kirkcaldy High Street, and then the final kind of music and stuff in the town square at the townhouse. And of course, it's never going to compare to that. But I think it's great that events like that can still have a presence in this year when we're not allowed to do these things live.
Sure.
Yeah, people are being very creative in ways of using technology to keep things going, whether it's actual kind of events like that or classes or groups of all sorts have managed to find a way, and integrating all ages as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely.
So, Paul, is there anything? What sort of hobbies are you sort of? What have you got on the go?
I used to love doing woodwork.
Right.
These days, to be honest, I'm pretty busy between playing and teaching, and I've got 2 young kids as well, Aria and Aaron's. So that sort of keeps things ticking over. Things are not surprised musically. And there's lots of things I'd like to do at some point.
Right.
I remember when I was at school, woodwork was one of my real passions.
Right.
And I made a piano stool. In school, which turned out slightly larger than it was intended to be. I had a slight calculation error, and it was
a duet piano stool. Perfect.
Possibly, yeah. And then I made almost made a music stand. Did a lovely bit of wood turning, and I didn't quite get the top bit done. But yeah, so something that's kind of creative thing that I would at some time when I have the space and time to do, would love to be doing a bit of composition as well. But
okay. So sorry to ask. I must ask. Taxidermy?
No, that was my brother's speciality.
Ah, right. I still remember coming to the house and seeing the animals, and wow, this is that was brilliant.
There used to be an array of all sorts of animals, foxes and owls and birds. I remember, David, one time when the first time you stayed over at my house or something, the room was absolutely full of animals staring at you.
Yeah, it was the eyes with the streetlights catching.
David, and what sort of stuff are you into these days? Have you been to any Foo Fighters concerts lately?
I haven't. No. Foo Fighters. That'd be great to see again. I went to see Muse a few years ago.
Oh, right, yeah.
In Glasgow, I really enjoyed that. It was great. It was part of their drones tour. But no Foo Fighters recently. No. Being a dad, I've got just 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. They seem to take up any time that I once had. So, yeah.
Did I ever tell you about it?
A little bit of walking. I try and skate sometimes and get up a hill if I can. So I'm quite enjoying that.
Yep. I was going to ask you. I seem to remember. I think we went to see the Foo Fighters in Newcastle. I'm going to say it was either 2002 or 2003. Probably about there. I think that's right. Did I ever tell you that I drew the short straw? It was about a year later. My daughters and the friend got tickets to see the Jonas Brothers.
Oh, crumbs.
And I had to go there. It was only because obviously because I'd been before. Eunice said, "Oh well, you have to take them. You have to take them." I can assure you, there was 10,000 screaming teenage girls, and there's about 25 blokes there. You could tell that that they had drawn the short straw, and where you stop to get your ticket to go in the car park. The car park attendant, realizing it's a bloke had to bring the girls along, Oh, here's your ticket. Enjoy the show, they'd say with a smile. And then you get in the building and you hand over the ticket. Enjoy the show. And then you go to the bar for a drink. Enjoy the show. You got your program. Enjoy the show. It was 2.5 hours just non-stop screaming. Anyway, the Foo Fighters were very good. Really enjoyed that.
One of the things I remember was they had the reflective surface on the front of the Flying V guitar, and they were reflecting the laser off the guitar into the audience. Yeah. I always thought that'd be quite good for your accordion, Paul. Get a little mirror.
Well, I've got a V accordion, and a few years back, I was right into, because I'm right into the disco lighting, and I got a Chauvet Obey 40, which is a DMX lighting controller, and it works on, and you can MIDI it, so you can actually MIDI up a V accordion. So every time you press a note, it activates a different light.
All right.
Yeah, seriously. It was just so much setting up. That was the problem, Like I spent a whole day. It feels like I spent a whole day doing that. So I never used it live on a gig. But yeah, that was. You've just reminded me of that. Listen, guys, it is now an hour and 15 minutes since we started, and it feels like we've only been chatting for about 5 minutes. So I'm not going to keep you much longer. I've got a couple more questions, 2 more in particular. My big passion at the moment is the Making a Murderer case. Have you anybody seen that on Netflix? The Netflix documentary Making a Murderer?
No, sorry.
No. Oh well worth checking out. It's going to be a big thing. Which brings me on to a final question, and again, I don't know if anybody ever been to America?
Yep. Oh, that's a great question. I'm supposed to be there now. That's right. Yeah, I'm supposed to be on holiday in New York at this very moment. Of course, they wouldn't currently let me through immigration. So yeah, I went on holiday to New York last year. And in fact, exactly a decade ago, yesterday I left Scotland to go traveling for a year. And as part of that trip, I was in America. I traveled from Florida, picking my way up the east coast of America, eventually crossing into Canada and going to Montreal, and then across Canada to Vancouver again, visiting various places on the way, and then down from Vancouver to Los Angeles. So I've kind of been around the outside, the 2 sides of America.
Wow, that's some tour. That is excellent. Brilliant. So, David, you've been to America. Paul, you've been to America?
Yep. Yeah,
yep.
That was good last year.
Are you familiar with a popular breakfast cereal called Captain Crunch?
Oh, aye.
You are?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
No,
yeah.
I didn't try that one, no.
There's a character called Captain Crunch. And there are some people that allege that Captain Crunch is British. How delusional could they be? Paul, thoughts?
Do you know what? I'd need to go and look at a picture of Captain Crunch to expand on that.
We will continue this topic at a future date. So yes, Captain Crunch is not available here in the UK, but it is. I'm trying to think. It's something like the 9th most popular breakfast cereal in America. I have had it a few times. It's quite nice. It's sweet, very, very sweet. You know, American stuff. It's very, very hard and crunchy. Even when it's soaked in milk, it still retains that. Hence the name Captain Crunch.
Is it like Frosties, Bob?
It's somewhat similar, but it's more like a small pillow shape. Yeah. But it's called Captain Crunch. We must investigate this further. You know, listen, guys, it's great to have chatted with you. You've really lifted me quite a bit, because I had a bit of disappointment at the weekend with a very close friend that from LA that's no longer with us. Hence the bit at the bottom, you see. But anyway, it's to do with this Netflix documentary Making a Murder. If you haven't, then do check it out. It's a very, very interesting case, but it's one that you'll need plenty of time to watch, because there are 20 1-hour-long episodes that deal with all the complexities of this case. So that's what I've been sort of following since Emily told me in what's the bar in Glasgow? There's an American bar, and is it called the New York Wine Bar or something? No, it's. It was something like that where she said, "Oh, have you ever heard of a place called Manitowoc?" No. And she said, "Well, you must watch this documentary." Anyway, listen. As I say, it's been absolutely brilliant getting to chat with you again. We mustn't wait another 4.5 years before we do this again. So I'm hoping at some point in the not too distant future to invite you back on again, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can do some more. As I say, if you get a chance to check up either Netflix Making a Murderer or Captain Crunch, that would be great. And
is that our homework for the next time, Paul?
Look, I'm not like you teachers. I don't set homework. no, I'm one of these if they want to do it, they'll do it. And another one of my favorite sayings is that I've had pupils that have been quite successful, very successful, but as I often say, I don't know whether they got there because of me or in spite of me. Probably a mixture of both. Anyway, as I say, thanks for joining us. I'll let you have a final word, Paul. Mo?
Oh, sorry, me. Which
Sorry, Sorry, I'm going round the sort of round.
Right. Just as lovely to see you, gentlemen, and it's been far too long, and I hope lockdown's not been too much of a painful experience to you. I'm glad to see you're all still here and looking healthy. That's a blessing.
Likewise, Paul. Great to see you all.
And you.
And thanks for putting this together. Paul Capaldi, great.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's been good fun.
Excellent. Thanks very much, guys. We'll catch you all again soon. Bye.
Take it easy.
Cheers.